Hey there, and welcome back to another one of my YouTube videos. Today we'll be talking about the trade site. In case you're new here, I post all sorts of different content, random content, whatever I feel like making. I did actually post a guide back in 0.2 covering trade site. GGG has given us a few more tools this league, so I figured it would be good to revisit it, especially since I've had some questions about some more advanced search techniques. So this will be still covering everything from scratch. I'm not going to tell you to go watch a previous video because that seems stupid. I may as well just have one video where I can just link everything, have everything there, and go. And then in the background, I'll be doing an AFK sim while we talk about trade sites. So I'll be popping back in here and there to pick up some loot. And if you're interested in this build, I do have a build covering this minion AFK simu posted very recently. I'll also have that link in the description. So without further ado, what are we looking at today? We're looking at trade site. So this is learning to search trade site is going to be your best friend. If you are a hideout warrior or just looking for gear for yourself, it is incredibly important to be able to maneuver trade site. First of all, just the time savings, knowing the best way to set up your filters, and also just currency savings. If you filter properly, you'll be able to save some money. Maybe you'll save some divine orbs and be able to cheap out on certain gear that you would not have otherwise seen because of the way that you were using maybe normal filters to look for items. So let's start. We have our normal trade site. This is what it looks like when you first get to it, and I'm sure most people would go the first time they look for an item. Oh well, I need, let's say, chaos damage, and I need resists. Let's say fire resist. And I need 35% to fix my build. Then I need cold resistance. Maybe I need 30%. And let's say I need some mana. I want 100 mana, 25 chaos, something like this. And then maybe you went rings because it was a ring that we're looking for. Oh, okay. So you find some items, and then you maybe look through. Okay, well, I don't want the dex, right? So you keep scrolling through. I don't want the fire damage, and then you end up in situations like this. So this is where we start with the normal filters. So generally, you're just adding in. You have your stat filters, and you can just outright put a modifier. The modifiers you put in this list are going to GGG will, like the trade site, will force these modifiers to come up. It'll only show you items with, in this case, these 4 modifiers. And then you say, okay, well, I don't want to keep seeing life regen. So maybe you add a third modifier to the suffix. You put cast speed so that you see cast speed stuff. Well, now that it went from 2 to 3 exalts up to 7 divs. And this is an iron ring. And okay, well, I don't want the iron ring. Okay, well, now your pearl ring is your basically first result. And again, I don't know if there's a better deal out there for something like this, or maybe you don't necessarily need this kind of spread in stats. And that's basically what we're going to be looking at today is some tips to maneuvering the trade site. And I think I heard some things. Go ahead and pick up. All right, so first and foremost, let's just talk about some of the filters that you can use. And this is where we can get into just very, very basic topics. So let's say you are a spellcaster and you want energy shield, and you look, or let's say for me a minion build, you look for minion skills 2 element. Well, armor evasion. So one of the quick things that you can first do is that if you're looking for just any energy shield base, you could always just say 0 evasion, 0 armor. And you only will get the pure energy shield. Likewise, if you are searching for a hybrid piece, let's say you're searching for chest pieces with the highest evasion and energy shield together, then what you could do is instead of searching, let's say, Falconer's jacket and searching for a Falconer's, unless you specifically want the Falconers, then you can also go body armor. Then very simply, you can go body armor 1-1, and you can always, shouldn't have to put 0, but I know there's Warrior Invictus that exists. And now you can search going down for energy shield, and because we put the restriction where there has to be at least 1 evasion, it means all of the pieces will be hybrid pieces. And now we have the pieces with the highest energy shield. We sorted by highest energy shield, and generally that means that the modifiers will all be of the highest tier. So that also means that the evasion will be very high. Now there's still fluctuations in how high the evasion is, because so for example, it's plus max energy shield and plus max evasion, and each of them rolls separately in terms of the divine. So maybe if somebody divines it for high energy shield, but they might have a really bad evasion roll. Anyway, all this to say, you'll have a pretty good idea of what the highest combination pieces are if you do a search like this. And again, we didn't even do any stat filters. All we did is use our equipment filters. So 0, 0, 1, 1 to search for our chess pieces. And the same can apply to boots, helmets, whatever. So that's the first thing that you need to, that is very helpful. Let me just enter another sim, and we'll keep talking about trade filters. There we go. So next, you can also do the same with exceptional pieces. So exceptionals are either over-qualityed or over-socketed items that drop. So let's say we are looking for exceptional sleek jackets. So we're just looking that sleek jackets were very popular for high energy shield evasion hybrid. We go sleek jacket, ruin sockets, but you're going to see a lot of corrupted. So we put 3 ruin sockets because normally exceptionals drop with 3. You're going to see a lot of corrupted, and you can obviously see where we're going with this. Then you put in corrupted, no. Now we see a bunch of stuff that we might not want to see. So we have fracture, like a low fracture here, low fracture, like fractures that you generally don't want to see. So there's a couple things that we can do here. One is that we can either take item rarity and make it normal, so we see only the base. And that means it's ready to be crafted by you. Same can go for magic as well, because generally you can't fracture a magic base, so you can start with a magic base, or you can go back to rare and say fractured no. Now you won't see those fractures, but you'll probably have noticed another tag that has appeared. I kind of wish GGG made this a little bit more clear or obvious. Now we have the sanctified tag. So these are, chess pieces that people sanctified and don't want anymore, but they cannot be crafted further. So sanctified is like as if it was corrupted. It's locked in, can't do anything to it besides change the ruins. So you can also then use the sanctified no. So here we have it. These are all your rares ready to go, and this one is 9 divines. So we were looking at 16 divines for a normal base, 9 divines for a rare base, and it would be cheaper to just buy 5 annuls for 2 divs and just annul it to 1 mod and start chaosing for whatever you want. So this looks like a decent option to choose. Another thing that we can do is use the requirements filter. So requirements, let's say we're looking for, generally, let's say for helmets, especially boots, the higher the minimum level, the higher the base, let's say evasion or armor or energy shield that it will have. And if we look for, let's say, just boots, and again, let's say we're looking for energy shield specifically, and 2 socket, non-corrupted, non-sanctified, non-fractured. We can even set it to normal. Obviously, these will be a given that they're normal. Requires level 59, and you see how they have 58 energy shield. And let's go down to level 80. They start with 82 energy shield. So there is a decent spread in the base energy shield of the boots. So again, 58 to 82. That's a decent amount. That's 24 base energy shield different. And when we're talking about having maybe 100% increase of that energy shield, 24 becomes 48 base energy shield and multiply by 400% or whatever you have in your tree. That adds up to a decent chunk of energy shield. So these are things to consider, and we can use the minimum level required to help filter out some of those low bases while we're just doing some basic searches. So let's go ahead. Maybe you search by the highest tier and you say, oh, well, that's kind of out of my budget. So we could say 80 is the highest tier. Oh, maybe 13 divines is out of my budget. Let's go ahead and drop it to 75. Well, this is starting to look a lot more reasonable. Maybe this isn't in your budget. Or if it's still out of your budget, you drop it down, 70. And now we have the luxurious slippers at 10 chaos. So we went from 13 divines for the base to 60 chaos, about 3 divines, to 10 chaos, half a divine for the base. So you can see how this could play a role. And then you might say glitched. Well, I want 35% move speed on the boots. So you're going to have to go and set your item level to 82. Now we're talking 148 divines for these boots. Yeah. And the highest base, oh boy, 409 divines for the boots. So yeah, gets expensive. These slippers, they do get a little expensive. So these are some of the basic equipment trade filters that you can be using. And one more that I'll show real quick before I get into some other topics would be quality. Quality could be really useful for normalizing things. So if I almost guarantee that if I search Breach Ring with, let's say, adds to lightning damage, if I search, it would be 34 or so. Some of these are going to be quality, and some of these will not be quality. Well, this one's putrefied, so you can't quality it anyway. So let's say corrupted, no. Sanctified, no. So some of these will be qualityed, and some of these will not be qualityed. And you'll see that this is, with the quality, this looks 2 to 74. So that's 76 total, divide by 2, and that's where you get the 38, which is where it passes this filter requirement. But this other one is tier 1, and it's 4 to 64. So again, it passes that filter requirement. But it is not quality. So this is tier 1, not quality. Tier 2 with quality. This one will show up with higher lightning damage. And so what you can do is you can set item quality to 0. And now you filter out so that all of these are going to be tier 1 lightning damage. Obviously, these are failed fractured. But you can do the same. You can then say fractured no. And now all you have are just T1 lightning damage rolls. So instead of having it muddied up with maybe a high tier 3 or tier 2 showing up in these searches, now you can do it like this and only see those tier 1s. So that basically covers most of the equipment filters that you'll probably ever use. At least off the top of my head, those are the ones I would mainly use. Next, we're going to start with some of the other filters. So we have counts. So this is where you can set up a stat group, and you can put in multiple requirements into this. So this is great for jewels, rings, things like that. So I'll show you an example. Let's say you have For your build, you want any 2 out of 3 of a mod on a jewel. So let's say we are looking for sapphires. You don't have to actually search sapphires. The mods will most likely restrict themselves anyway. Then we want any 2 of maximum energy shield, elemental damage, let's say cold damage, spell damage, any 2 of these. Just for the sake of it. And then here we go. Now we have energy with elemental, spell plus cold, cold plus Ellie. So again, things like this. This is where count can be really, really powerful in just showing you a bunch of different options. So this is where you can start making it more effective for yourself in terms of what you want to look for and at a budget. So maybe energy shield plus Ellie is a little bit cheaper than. I mean, this is probably the more expensive combo, to be honest, off the top of my head. But yeah, so you can use things like this. The other thing that you can also do with counts, that I don't really ever see other people doing, is let's say you're looking for a ring with, let's say those stats that we were talking about before, chaos damage, and cast speed, and fire resistance, and cold resistance. We also said mana, right? I'm just going to loosen up the requirements just a little bit so more stuff will show up. 20, 30, 20, and 20. Okay, and ring. Okay, so we have 31 results. Perfect. But you might obviously scroll through and say, well, I don't really want a sapphire ring. I don't want an iron ring. Like if I'm already searching for cold res, I don't want it on a sapphire. I definitely don't want an iron, things like that. What you can do is that you can then set up a count for the implicit. So you could say maximum quality. So you have the maximum quality, which is a breach ring. Then you might say, well, I could use more fire resistance. So fire resistance. So you could do implicit fire resistance. Implicit, maybe gold ring. You want more rarity of items found. And we're going to set the count to 1. So that means one of these mods has to show up on the ring. And there you go. Now every single ring that we see is one of those 3 that we just talked about. The rarity for the gold ring, the maximum quality for the breach ring, and the fire resistance for the ruby ring. And then maybe you say, oh, well, actually a prismatic ring could be good. So you could look at all elemental resistances. Implicit. Now you can add in, you see there's 1 extra, and there it is. The Phoenix Band prismatic ring to give you the all-res implicit. So this is one powerful way to use counts to give yourself more variety in what you're seeing in terms of the different bases, and also just filtering out some of the junk bases that you're not going to want to see. The same works on amulets, and one example is when I was crafting my chest piece, I was looking for ES chest pieces. So again, I was doing evasion, armor, then I would say set the level to 65. Corrupted, no. Sanctified, no. Fractured, no. And then I could count with Feathered Raiment gives you the mana before life. And then the Sacramental gives me the... or actually what I did was a knot, which is my next topic. But Sacramental gives you faster energy shield. Faster start of energy shield recharge. And now all you're going to see are Sacramentals and Feathered. There's a lot of Sacramental. Let me just disable the... There's the Feathered. So there's ways like this that you can do it. And the other thing, and this leads into my next topic, instead of doing it like this, we could use a knot. So the main one that I really did not want to get was the Flowing Raiment, which has the mana regeneration rate implicit. But now, since we set the minimum level to 65, everything I'm going to see is going to be either Sacramental or Vile or Feathered Raiment. Obviously, it seems that people don't very much value Sacramental Robe, so this is what's showing up first, while Vile tends to be the most valuable of the set. Yeah, these are... This filled up the whole search, but then let's say just for... just to show, and then let's say we didn't want the Sacramental either, and we just wanted to go between Feathered or Vile. Again, Feathered is way cheaper than a Vile robe. And the reason that I was doing this was to search for Spirit to Fracture. So, and again, so these would be my options. So I had my Sacramentals with Spirit, I had my Vile robes with Spirit, and I had, if I scroll far enough, there it is, Feathered Raiments with Spirit, the T1 Spirit roll. So these are ways that you can use. So this is one example of combining the trade filters that we talked about along with a not filter. So not is to remove certain modifiers from the pool, and these will just, any item with one of these modifiers will just never show up in your search. So this is one powerful way to maybe give yourself more variety. The other thing that you can also do with this is to limit modifiers. So you might tell yourself, one example is that, let's say I'm looking for scepters. So I want a rattling scepter with Spirit. And if I look at Spirit, let's say 60 or 61 because that's tier 1. Oh, wait a second. Tier 5 plus tier 5. How did this happen? And this is because scepters have scepters have two spirit modifiers, a pure spirit and a hybrid spirit modifier on them. And so when we're searching for spirit, almost guaranteed you're going to see both of the low rolls, but together, and it shows up as one big roll. And so what you can then do is go not, and we know that the hybrid always comes with mana. So not to maximum mana. And now we only see tier 1 spirits. Again, we're going to have to filter by corrupted, no. Sanctified, no. Fractured, no. And now we just have pure T1 spirit rolls. That's it. This is one quick way that you can use knots. Another example would also be for guiding palms. Let's say you're trying to corrupt for a Palm of the Dreamer. Then you're gonna do a count for yourself. So you're gonna do Purity of Fire, Purity of Lightning, Purity of Ice. You're gonna do count 1, and then you're gonna very quickly see. Then you're gonna go item rarity unique. And then if you scroll through, or if I do uncorrupted, that would probably be easier. Ah, wait a second. Sacred Flame. This can't corrupt into a Palm of the Dreamer. And then so what you can do is that you can then just take the line, like let's say enemies in your presence, and you can set this up as a not filter. Enemies in your presence. And then do identified. There you go. And now all you're going to have is uncorrupted Palm of the Guiding Palms. Just like that. So that's another way that you can use a not filter. And one last thing, I don't have an example off the top of my head. I can't remember the last time I used this, to be honest, is that you can set up a not filter to remove modifiers that are too low. So let's say you're searching for... Let's say you're searching for a chest piece, or you're working on a new build and you might have multiple pieces to fill. You don't exactly want to search for body armors with low resistance rolls. So maybe you'll set yourself up like this. I guess this leads into my next topic, weighted sum. So you'll do a weighted sum, and you want, most people target, let's say 100 total resistances. So you'll set yourself up for example, Resist. Let's do fire resist. Cold. Lightning. Fire resistance. Wait, 111. And you're going to look for 100 total resistance on an ES body armor. Not corrupted. Not sanctified. Not fractured. You're going to maybe look to work it a little bit. And there you go. So you have a 101 total sum for the resistance rolls. Maybe you're going to set yourself like 750 ES. All right, so now we have some samples. And you'll see, oh, well, wait a second. This cold res is quite low. So let's say you set it to be a little bit lower, a bit more lenient, but then you set up a not filter. So you can do set up the same filters, lightning and fire, and you say a max. You do max of 30. Realistically, this should also be here. So yeah, I don't think this is a great example, because you can do a max of 30 here, or min of 30, so it won't actually count into the weighted sum unless the minimum cold resistance is met. But yeah, I don't think the not filter helps here. I can't remember what I did with it. I set up a filter and I put max with a not to filter stuff out. And I just, for the life of me, I can't remember what it was. But it is a way that you can filter out low rolls on something, but leave yourself the availability of high rolls. So I think it was with rings, and I was saying, well, look, I don't mind if the resistance is there as long as it's high enough. So I set up my prefixes for the ring, and then I just left the suffixes open, but maybe set up knots like, okay, well, as long as the cold res is over 30, I'm okay with it. Under 30, I don't want to see it. Like, it means it would have to be whittled for me. So things like this could be done as well. Whereas, like, a weighted sum is not good for the suffixes for a ring, because then you have to start adding in the attributes and other things like that that you might want to see on a ring, but not necessarily care too much about. So you're going to put in a lot more work for a weighted sum that doesn't necessarily show you better results anyway. So that is, I believe, what I did with a knot is that if I was very flexible on an item, and I just didn't want to see low rolls, as long as they were like, let's say T1, T2, I'm okay with seeing it and seeing what comes out as you know, multi T1, T2. So I might say like not 30 here. Let's say for these body armor that we're talking about, to apply the same principle, then I can say, well, I don't want chaos resistance. Let's say I'm going chaos inoculation. Now I just leave this blank, so it means no chaos res will show up, and and any cold, lightning, or fire res will be over this amount. Maybe I don't want to see. Let's just see what even shows up. Intelligence, that's a good point as well. So int, you can put int, and you want to say has to be at least 28. And now that cuts down even more. You don't want to see stun threshold at all, so you can just remove stun threshold. So things like this. You can start building your filter like this. Maybe you want faster start of energy shield, maybe you don't. And you can build your filter like this. So life regeneration rate is probably not useful to most people. Like yes, and that cuts down even more. Reduced duration of bleeding, and I think ignite also exists on this. Oh, now you start cleaning up, and then you don't want to necessarily have it. You don't necessarily want to craft it yourself. Like this is just empty. It still meets the requirements of not having any of these mods, but it's empty. So you do pseudo affix. How is it? Modifiers. So suffix modifiers, minimum 3. Or you could also do empty suffix modifiers. Oh, sorry. So not empty suffix modifier. So it has to be filled. So it always has to be filled now. And now you can start scrolling through and, okay, well, maybe attribute requirements doesn't want to be there either. And we're starting to get to some much nicer results. Triple res, so here we have fire, lightning, and fire plus chaos. Here we have fire, lightning, strength and dex, things like that. But we're starting to get into a much more interesting set of modifiers, and we built out a not filter for this. So again, if we're very flexible on what we want, but we aren't looking for anything specific on the suffixes, this was like, let's say, one way to build your search for this. It's a bit more convoluted, and most people, most of the time, they'll be like, oh, well, I just need to replace my body armor. These are the resists I need. You can just search for those resists. Or maybe you'll say, well, I can replace the ruins on my gloves to swap out some resistances, so it has to be within these ranges, and then you can set up your search like that. Meanwhile, this is where, if you just have a ton of flexibility, you might build your search something similar to this, in that you can deal with a lot of different options, and you just want, maybe you're more on a budget, and now you have a lot more things to search through and filter by. Versus building, like, say, specifically, well, I need strength, dex, cold, right, fire res, like, you know, you're not going to see too many options with that specific combination. So, yeah. All right. Next we have... So next, let's just talk further about weighted sums. So weighted sums are very, very powerful for, you know, either normalizing modifiers or just giving you a total of modifiers and being able to search for a total. So when I show you, let's say I want a breach ring with triple flats. So I do a count, I do adds, physical, lightning, cold. I don't know off the top of my head what the modifiers are required to hit high rolls. I think it's like 20, let's say 25, 25, 25. This is still tier 4. Still tier 4. 35, 35, 35. There it is. Okay. Now we're on to all T1s. Actually, there's still a T2 here. I think lightning requires it to be like 40 to be tier 1. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. We still have some results. So normally you would have a count, and if you count like this, okay, well now you will see these 3 modifiers. But it's very rigid of a search. Do you see how we only have 9 results? And there might be something that reaches similar numbers. But what we're going to do is that we're instead going to set up a weighted sum. And we'll probably see very similar items in the search. Let's say we set it to weighted sum of 100. Now it'll actually show us the sum of the value of the damage after the flats. So this weighted sum shows us the total weight, and now we can actually sort by the total sum. So this is the highest triple flat ring on the market with the 3 flats that we listed. Then we also have sanctified. Yeah, so we have a bunch on the market. There it is. There's more on the market. And we can sort by sum. And this is a very powerful way to say, okay, well, if I'm searching for damage on rings, this is one great way to search for damage on rings, because you can very quickly see. You can even do it to spot rings that are a bit cheaper than others. So it's like, oh, well, I just passed one that's 150 and everything else around it is like 300, 900, so things like that is what you can use weighted sums to search for as well. Obviously, it's 150 here, and then we scroll down for 120. Now you get one that's also triple T1, and this one also has nice resist, things like that. So you can try searching for snipes in this way using a weighted sum. You can just use it to look for things. So we set the weighted sum to a minimum of 100. Let's set it 115. And now it's like, okay, well, it's 33 divs around my budget. We have 45 divs, uncorrupted. There is a tier 2 in here. But yeah, 50 divines. There's still a tier 2. Tier 2. Tier 1 for 65. That's sanctified. Tier 2. Damn. Maybe I need to get back into crafting rings. This looks profitable. So here, this is looking like a decent ring. And again, if we had searched with a very rigid or strict, like, oh, it has to be 35 plus, would this physical have met? This physical damage to attacks would not have shown up in our previous search. So this Phoenix Turn Breach Ring, I do not believe is going to show up. So if I sort by Corrupted, no. Sanctified, no. So we have the Phoenix Turn right here at 80 divines. And if I go by my count, 150, 220, 238. But that Phoenix Turn was triple T1. So you see what I mean? That you can use a weighted sum, just inch up the weight just enough until the point where you can start regularly seeing triple T1s. And here we have a triple T1 flat prefix for 80 divines, while with our other search, yeah, it was showing us triple T1s as well, but it was looking at 220 divines for the cheapest. So this is one way that you can do a little bit of sorting. Same goes with resist rolls. So let's say, and you keep in mind, you can also pair weighted sums together. Same goes with resist rolls. So let's say I want to do, and this is where weighted sum becomes quite powerful as well, is that let's say I want to do, look for resist rolls on this breach ring, then I can do resist, cold, lightning, fire. Don't forget, all res exists, and if we're not playing CI, then chaos res also exists. But then you're also going to say glitched. All elemental resistance is like up to 16 as a max roll, and this is where the weighted sum becomes very valuable. So, you know, one all res, all LE gives you one fire, one cold, one lightning. So you can give it a weight of 3. This multiplies the value that of whatever is on the search by 3 for all elemental resistance. And you give these the weight of 1, and then maybe chaos res, because generally on items you have about half. The max roll on chaos res is about half of what you would get on other resist rolls. So maybe you'll tell yourself, okay, well, give it a weight of 2 or maybe 1.5. So a max roll of 27 on chaos res times 1.5 gives you about 40, which is more or less in line with the max on cold, lightning, and fire. If it's tier 2, like let's say if it's eye level 80, then these all cap out at 40. And now you have a second sum, so this is our resistance sum. And let's say we inch this up. Let's say we want at least 80 or 90 resistance on this ring. And there you go. So we have 55 divs. Our Phoenix Turn is still up there at 107 resistance total. If I multiply my all res by 3, then my fire res and cold res, and I add them all together, this will give me 107. And then this is another way that you can sort through. It's like, okay, well, that's 108, 107, 111. So this is a little bit more on the resistance roll. This is a great way to normalize resistances with each other. So again, and you can also keep in mind, you can also do not percent rolls. I don't believe you can do percent. But let's say you know that cold res is 45 max, then you can do 1 divided by 45, and you can put this as your weight. That means that at a max roll, it'll give you a value of 1. Same with the lightning res, same with the fire. Then all elemental resistances, you're gonna want to do probably 3 divided by 16, or and then chaos resistance is 1 out of 27. Or I'm just going to take this part. And then let's see, we want at least 2.5. And then you can inch that number up and up and up. I may have done the calculation wrong somewhere because these are too low. But yeah, you can do below 1 as multipliers as well. So yep, there you have it. That's the weighted sum that you can be using. Then we're going to go to a pseudos. I brought this up before. So pseudo modifiers, they're new. These span a whole range of, let's say, how many desecrated modifiers it has, how many empty prefixes, suffix, just empty modifiers in general, enchants, so things like that. So, for example, one thing that you could look for is, let's say you're looking for grand spectrums, and if you look at for grand spectrum emeralds, and you look at corrupted, you're probably just going to see a bunch of no implicits, right? These are just bricks. Okay, we'll start with dex. So now the first thing that we can do is limit our search to pseudo enchant modifiers. 1. Now we only see the ones with some kind of enchant. So, and then you can sort through like this. You know, so if you're just looking for 3 grand spectrums, you're not super picky, but you want something with enchants, this is one way that you can do it. And the same can go for grand spectrum ruby. Because these don't have a roll range, it's always just 2%, you can look at Grand Spectrum Ruby as well. And just look for, and you can look at some of the available enchants like that for yourself. So this is one pseudo modifier that you can be looking at, and it's very useful for things like jewels, especially the Grand Spectrums, because the enchants are the only things that really matter there. You can all keep in mind if you're looking for a specific enchant, so let's say Grand Spectrum Emerald, if you want the Corrupted Blood immunity, because I know it's one of the things I mentioned in my guide, you can search by enchant Corrupted Blood. Things like that. So this is one of the pseudo modifiers, and one very powerful one is the open affixes. And I'll show you a search for like this. So let's say you're trying to desecrate, or I mean, there's 2 things that it's very useful for. Let's say you're trying to desecrate a jewel or just anything. If I go by, let's just do a jewel. Let's say you're trying to make a double crit damage jewel. I will search for, let's do count, critical damage bonus, and critical damage bonus for spells. And you'll see that, actually, they're pretty cheap. I'll also put, I forget, I don't know what they would want. Probably spell damage and elemental damage. Okay. That looks more normal. So you can see that they start getting decently expensive. But now what you can also do is that you can then add to your count pseudo modifier. And since crits are suffix, then we're going to look at suffix modifiers, or we can either do just total suffix modifiers or empty suffix modifiers. And we can do 1. So 1 empty suffix modifier. And then maybe search by jewel only. And now we have some options. 135x, 200x. Let's go and buy this. In the middle of the sim. It's about time. So just for an example, go ahead and buy this.
Oh, nice choice.
And the reason we're looking specifically for open suffix is so that we can just insta desecrate it, and it'll desecrate always goes to the empty to one of the empty lines. In this case, there's only space for one suffix, so the desecrate will always go to the suffix. Then we can go ahead and go check our desecrate. So again, this is one way. This is one of the ways that you can probably cheap out, especially on jewels, is try and make your own jewels like this. We did not get it, so it's fine. But again, 135x, that's like about a tenth of a divine. So when the cheapest jewel is 8 divines, then you know, you get a lot of attempts to make your own jewel. The other thing is, sometimes the jewels that you're trying to craft are just bought out. And the other thing is, if you, let's say, have 2 suffixes, let's say you have a garbage suffix. So we're going to do count 1. Let's say you have a garbage suffix like this flammability magnitude. What ends up happening is that if you suffix desecrate, it's a 50-50 whether you remove the crit damage bonus or the flammability. Now, at this cost, it might even be worth that 50-50. 1 to 2 exalts versus 135 exalts with 1 open to guarantee that you don't hit the crit damage. Probably even better to just go like this. But this is one way that you can search for jewels that are maybe a bit cheaper and craft your own jewels. Craft your own jewels like this. So yeah, that's one thing to do with pseudos. So we have that. The other thing is if you're trying to fracture an item, so we go look, just to explain, fracture a random modifier on a rare item with at least 4 modifiers, locking it in place. And when you fracture, it is fixed. Sanctify won't touch it, nothing like that. So you might tell yourself, so if I go again back to the scepter, so let's say I want to fracture a T1 spirit for myself. Well, first of all, I can go look and say fractured spirit. Let's say 62. Rattling scepter, corrupted, no. Sanctified, no. 14 divines. 14 divines for a tier 1 increased spirit fracture. And then let's say we're just going for increased spirit. $62, I'll put the same modifier, not fractured this time. And again, we're probably going to have to do the not mana, just so that we don't see the hybrid. 2 divines. Here it's 3. So there, I mean, here we're lucky. There's quite a few. There's honestly quite a few in the search immediately that look really good for fracturing purposes. But yeah, you might tell yourself, oh, well, here we have 4 modifiers. This is harder to fracture than, let's say, one of these 2. So to give you an example, then this is actually a perfect roll. I'm going to go ahead and try and fracture this. Why not? For a video. Only 3 divines.
It's yours.
So the reason why empty affixes might matter is because here you want to give yourself the best chance of landing this fracture. So I'm going to go ahead and just throw 1 exalt at it. Garbage. It's fine. And then we take our fracturing and we take a desecrate. We desecrate 1 random modifier, doesn't really matter where. And now we have 4 modifiers on the item. Fracture will not land on the desecrate. So, effectively, there's only 3 modifiers. So we have a 1 in 3 chance to land on the spirit roll. This is how you can increase your chances at getting your fracture. You missed, that's okay. I hit 1 just before this recording, so I'm totally okay with this. So, when you're doing your searches for things to fracture, you might tell yourself that you're going to look for empty modifiers. 3. The only thing that you have to consider is that this will also remove magic, because technically magic can only have two modifiers, one prefix, one suffix. If I search like this will be removed, but so will the magic one. And you'll see that the magic one is gone. And here we have 4 empty modifiers, 4 empty modifiers, etc. So you do have to know your market and know how to search for things. I think you can also just do modifiers. 2. Or do a max of 3. And now we have the magic bases back. So these are some ways that you can use pseudo for modifiers, modifier count, and it's very powerful for just searching for fracture bases to fracture for yourself. And the same can be applied to amulets as well for spirit fractures, things like that. So yeah, there we have it. For the last part of this video, I'll just show you 2 maybe slightly more advanced searches. The second one I haven't actually done yet myself, so I'm curious if it'll work. The first one I'll show you is jewel searches. So we were kind of touching on that before. Maybe I shouldn't have closed it. But let's say we are looking for... Actually, I probably just have a minion. I probably have my minion jewel search around. So there we have it. So we have this staff filter means that I will always see minion damage, which is a prefix. So I will always, always, always see my minion damage. Then we have a count, and this is my count for other prefixes. So you'll see count 1, either max energy shield, minion life, or an empty prefix. Again, we're talking about how I can go ahead and craft another prefix on myself. So we can go ahead and do a count for an empty prefix. And keep in mind, I'm looking for higher tier mods, so I set a limit of 11 out of 15. So normally the range is 5 to 15. I set 11. And the same for the suffixes. We have minion crit chance, and minion attack and cast speed. I set a minimum of 4, which is max roll, 15, which is 15 out of 20, and 20 out of 25 for these. And then the knots. This is because of there's certain desecrated modifiers that will combo that will do combo, like let's say ES plus spell, ES plus attack, or ES plus totem, things like that. So we set up a knot filter to remove those desecrated modifiers that we don't want to see. And then we were left with a pretty concise list of jewels. So this is a more advanced search that we were able to do. And then, so the last one that I wanted to show, and again, it's like here I toggled off some, so maybe, you're using if you want more presence, and add the presence back in, and now we have some more options as well. So here we can just toggle on and off like what we want, or maybe if I'm switching back to a focus, I add the focus ones back in. Not that I see any. Okay. Anyway. And the last one is, I've seen this question come up several times in the past few days. Let's say you're trying to search for just prefix or suffix rarity on a ring. This one kind of tickled my interest in, can we build a search that will accurately only show one or the other? Because what happens is you do ring or amulet, and you do rarity of items found. And I search for, let's say, 20. Tier 2 plus tier 4. This one actually is a tier 2. Let's say 23. 23 is the minimum roll for a prefix T1, so that's why I'm choosing that. All right, so we have tier 3 plus tier 4, same thing. Tier 2 plus tier 4. So you see the problem is that you're getting just a bunch of junk. And that you want to maybe fracture a tier 1 rarity, or you want to recombine the tier 1 rarity, and now you're just getting a lot of noise in your filter. So, what do we do? All right, so I'm going to go ahead and do a count. So I want rarity, obviously. And the thing is, when we do rarity of items found, we can't force suffix or prefix. So we are going to do rarity of items found, and let's say I'm looking for a suffix, which means it has to be at least 22. We're going to do corrupted no, sanctified no, fractured no. And again, we're getting stuff with noise in it. That happens. Maybe I want this on a gold ring only. Yep, lots of noise. Okay. So let's go ahead, and what we're going to do is we're going to do a count for prefixes. So adds physical damage to attacks, and the goal of this is to fill up all the prefixes that could possibly roll on a ring, except the rarity. And we're going to set the count to 3. Don't want to do this yet because I need more into the count. So what else do we have? What else did I not add? Life. I did a life. We need lightning damage. Full damage. For damage. Chaos damage is another modifier. We can also pull a PoE 2DB just to give us some we have evasion rating that can go in there as well. Accuracy rating. And I think that more or less covers it. And then you do count 3. Now, one thing that you will notice is that it always means 3 prefixes, and you might say glitched. There are some, sometimes people just slam it a couple times or regal it and hit it, and there's going to be some open prefixes. So one thing that you can then do is back to our topic about modifiers, pseudo modifiers. You do prefix, empty prefix 1. And you'll see our search expands a little bit, and and here it is. There's one good example, is that we get this is a ring with 1 empty prefix. And you say, well, 1 empty prefix. What about 2 empty prefix? And then we can actually add in empty prefix as a second line 2. And so what will happen is that if something is missing 2 modifiers, it will count once for the 1 missing and 1 missing minimum, and then a second time for the 2 missing minimum. And you'll see that our search expands a little bit more, and here we go, 2 missing modifiers. And now, in theory, every single rarity of item found that we see will be suffix, and I even sorted by rarity of items found, and from high to low, which means that there are no prefix plus suffix rarity of item found in the search. So for the purposes of maybe a fracture, then this is a decent option. And you can also just do one last thing that you can also do is not desecrated. Rarity of items found, to make sure that if you're going to fracture, then you don't want that modifier desecrated. And there you go. So this should be a pretty accurate search, and will only show suffix, and you can obviously do the same in reverse to get only prefix rarity of items found. So let's go ahead and buy this, and I'll show, this will just be a sneak peek into what we would do in the crafting video, which will be coming out at some point.
You definitely want that one, right?
So we have a gold ring with the rarity of items found that we want. Then we're going to go and look if I have another just junk ring around. I most likely do. Ring. That tier 7 might still be too high. And this is what's called cleaning the base. 42%. That's decent. Gonna take a recon moment. Unlucky. Okay. Assuming that succeeded, we would have a rare item with just 2 modifiers. And so remember what I showed you before with attempting to fracture the scepter. Now we only have 2 modifiers. We exalt it once more. We add the collarbone on to put a desecrated modifier. And now we have a 1 out of 3 to hit the fracture. So that's one example of what you could do with this. So there we have it. This is already a pretty long video covering lots of topics on trade searching. Hopefully it's informative. I really tried going from A to Z on this. I hope I covered all the different types of searches. This can be applied to wands as well, things like that. In that, you know, try and find stuff that's a little bit cheaper. One last search I'll show is for wands. So let's say you're looking for +5 to lightning skills. So +5 lightning. You're gonna do sanctified no, corrupted no. And then you can do a weighted sum, spell damage, elemental damage, because this is a new one that's a desecrate on, and lightning damage. So now instead of sorting just by spell and let's say lightning, now you can have all 3 at the same time and see what your modifiers or what your price range would look at. Let's say cast speed is at least tier 1. And critical hit chance, you'll be okay with at least 50. For spells. And it has to be a wand. There we go. So this is one way that we just very quickly whipped up a search. And honestly, whenever anybody asks me to price check a wand or something, this is kind of the search that I'm just going to throw and build and quickly show, like, okay, well, your wand fits around here, let's say. So, yep, there you have it. Hope you enjoyed the video. Hope it was informative. And I'll see you on the next one. Cheers.